War has never been good for anything. I mean, Danielle, this whole thing starts because, in 2014, the State Department, our State Department, instigated a coup in Kiev, threw out the people who were elected, and now we're paying the price for it. And we've been trying to move NATO to Ukraine ever since. I mean, it's absolute madness. This no war should not be happening. None of this should be happening. I don't think it matters to us at all if Ukraine is close to Russia. Somebody, some bureaucrat, her name is Victoria Nuland, if you want to know, instigated this whole coup, and now we're all paying a gigantic price for it. Daniela, let's suppose Russia had an alliance with Mexico and they started stationing troops in Mexico and missiles and tanks. What do you think we would do? We'd say, oh my gosh, it's so good. Let's drink vodka together. But they'd send an army down there and run them away, just as they did in Cuba. This never should have happened. We should not have done what we did. The Russians should have somehow made it clear that this would be an act of war, and the war should go on peacefully as it can. Everybody knows what the world's international currency is supposed to be. Anybody can use it for anything. But now Washington, in the last few years, has started putting sanctions on people. Daniela, it is ruining America, ruining parts of America, because now everybody is frantically looking for something to compete with the dollar. The Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, the Brazilians, the Iranians are all working as fast as they can to come up with something to compete with the US dollar for political reasons, also economic reasons. I mean, America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot every day. This means that now, sooner than it would have been, the US dollar will no longer be the world's medium of exchange in the international currency. That's not good for the US. It certainly was not good for Britain, which used to be the world's international currency. When they lost that status, well, they lost a lot of things. Well, no currency has lasted forever. No number one currency has ever lasted forever. If you go back and look at history, we've had international currencies, or the world's medium of exchange. Maybe they lasted 80 years, 100 years, 150 years max. They've all changed. It's changed over and over and over ever since the beginning of time. The US has been on top for a while, but now, as I said, we are the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. And now we will not let the US dollar stay neutral. Now we're using it as a political or an instrument of war. So that means nobody in his right mind who thinks they might cross the US someday is going to want to use US dollars. It's been 12 years since we had the last recession in the US. That's the longest in American history. So we're overdue just on a time basis. I mean, it could last 20 years. Who says it couldn't go on forever, but it never has. So I am sure, because of inflation higher, which will drive interest rates higher, we're going to have a recession in the foreseeable future. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just telling that's the way it's always worked since the beginning of time. So yes, we're going to have a recession, probably fairly soon. You should read Stansberry. They'll tell you when the recession's coming. They're smarter than I am. And when the recession comes, a lot of us are going to get hurt. I hope I survive. I hope we all survive, but some people are going to get hurt. My view is something is going to cause this thing in Ukraine to calm down fairly soon. It's not doing Putin any good. It's not doing anybody any good. So who knows what? If he can find a way to save face, things will stop. That will lead to a big rally, especially since central banks are not so aggressive right now. We'll have the big rally and be the last rally. I hope that if it works that way, that I'm smart enough to sell that last rally. It'll probably be a big rally, because then people say, gosh, nothing can ruin the stock market now. And then it'll be the end. The Fed is a crisis, yes. The Fed has rarely been right about anything in the history of the Federal Reserve. What is it, 110 years old almost now? They've rarely been right about anything. They told us that there was no inflation, then they said it was transitory. I don't know, don't pay that much. I don't know what they're saying now. Throughout history, money printing and borrowing and spending huge amounts of money has always led to inflation. We're going to have inflation now. It's going to get worse. It won't go up every day, but it's going to get worse. And that's going to lead to higher interest rates, and it's going to lead to profit erosion in some industries and some companies. And all of us are going to have to pay more for a loaf of bread or whatever we buy. Well, there'll be a big collapse. If it works the way I said, we have a big rally, one last big rally. It'll be a blow off, call it what you will. Many stocks will really go through the roof. And then when they start going down, Danielle, I know you've been around a while. Bear markets always hurt a lot of people, especially the stocks that have been the strongest. Go back to any big bear market, and the stocks that were very strong before the bear market go down 70, 80, 90% sometimes, even if the company survives. You know, Amazon, Microsoft, these stocks in the late 90s collapsed. We still have them. The companies are still here. The stocks are still here. But the stocks that do well going into the bear market really get crushed. Well, as I said before, I own US dollars. I don't know how long I'm going to own them if it has one last rally, and if stocks do. I have not sold short, Daniela, but probably if it works the way I think it will, is I will start selling short again. Now, if you know how to sell short, you can make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. But if you know how to sell short, it's a way to protect yourself and prosper in a bear market. Agriculture is a disaster. Some of the assets, some of the commodities I told you about, there are fundamental changes taking place in supply and demand. Commodities have not been in a wild bull market for a while. I mean, silver, Daniela, silver is down 60% or 55% now, 55 from its all-time high. That's not a bubble. That's a disaster for the people who own silver for a long time. So there are places that one can invest. I would say real assets, commodities, selling short, cash, but you have to have the right cash, you know, because many currencies are going to go down a lot. And if you can find markets that are depressed, I mean, maybe by then Russia will be open again. Russia will certainly be a hated market by the end of this year and next year. If it opens again, maybe that would be a place to look. I always like to look at places that are hated and that are depressed. And of course, in the last few years, nearly everything has gone up except commodities. Everybody needs to get knowledgeable. You can watch Stansberry, read Stansberry, whatever you have to do to get knowledgeable. Please get knowledgeable, because we're going to have some very complicated times in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. A lot of countries and people are going to go bankrupt. But if you're knowledgeable about what's going on, you will become prepared. And if you get prepared, you might make a lot of money. A lot of people made a lot of money in the 30s, Daniela. It was a horrible economic disaster. But a lot of people came out of it rich. The key is to be prepared, know what you're doing. Don't listen to hot tips, and just invest in what you yourself know a lot about. But a lot of people, and I hope I do survive, but a lot of people are not going to survive the next bear market.